Portimão, the track where champions either fly or fracture. The mountain wind bites harder than reason, and in turn 10, Francisco Pecco Bagnaia's front tire surrendered its last bit of faith. 5th DNF in 6 Grands Prix. Not a statistic, a scream. You could feel it when the Desmo Sedici slid across the Portuguese asphalt, the sound of carbon and sand grinding out the last of his dignity for the season. The cameras cut away, the paddock sighed. The number 1 plate, once untouchable, looked like a cursed medallion. Pecco walked back to the pits without throwing a glove, without yelling. That silence said more than any outburst. His body spoke survival, not defeat. Michael Laverty called it cold. He needs a new bike. No poetry, no excuses. A surgeon's diagnosis. Michele Pirro, watching from the test garage, said he'd been amazed by Pecco's mood swings this year. Amazed, as if confusion itself had become the story. Ducati's golden boy, their clean, calm emperor, had become their most fragile soldier. Not because he forgot how to ride, but because the GP25 turned against its maker. So now the question hangs in the oil-stained air of the paddock. Can you rebuild a champion's trust in metal? Or once it betrays you, is it gone forever? Comment your verdict, because this isn't about a crash. It's about survival in a world that worships results and forgets pain. Remember when 2025 was supposed to be the dream year? The Italian dynasty was intact, the lineup divine. Marc Marquez and Pecco Bagnaia, the most lethal duo in Ducati's history. Bologna thought they'd written perfection, but perfection has a way of cracking when pride interferes with evolution. Ducati's engineers believed the GP25 was progress. Lighter, more aggressive, sharper in the mid-corner, supposedly engineered to annihilate what the GP24 had perfected. But Pecco had warned them early in Thailand testing. The feeling isn't right. Front end's gone. The bike doesn't talk. Nobody listened. Why would they? The man who brought 8 titles worth of chaos into the red box was grabbing headlines. Marc was faster, louder, magnetic. The factory tilted his way, naturally, because racing is about gravity, and Marquez bends space around himself. While Marquez rode the same machine like it was forged for war, Bagnaia looked like a surgeon forced to use a hammer. Every weekend, he wrestled with a front that didn't obey the gospel of smoothness. Braking zones became mines. Apexes became prayers. Portimão wasn't the first cut. It was the final nail in a season of mechanical distrust. The DNF chain started in Mandalika, expanded in Phillip Island, turned vicious in Sepang, and came home to Portugal like an echo that couldn't be stopped. 5 retirements in 6 races. That's not inconsistency. That's possession. Inside Ducati's pit box, whispers said he'd gone soft, lost hunger. Wrong. He was adapting to survive. Every lap was him negotiating with a machine that wanted to throw him off. But corporate walls don't listen to quiet riders. They worship chaos and statistics. And through it all, Michele Pirro saw it in his eyes. The same man who once radiated calm, now oscillating between fury and disbelief. He called it moods. What he meant was dissonance. Bagnaia wasn't losing pace, he was losing trust. So when Laverty said he needs a new bike, it wasn't criticism, it was an autopsy. Ducati built a monster that bit its own creator. What's worse, the crash itself or the silence from the box after? Portimão sprint weekend was supposed to be a rebound. Marco Bezzecchi took pole, Pedro Acosta looked like a comet, and Alex Marquez ended up stealing the sprint. But all eyes were on Pecco. 5th DNF in 6 races meant the word redemption had already lost flavor. He lined up knowing the title race was a ghost he couldn't chase anymore. The track was dry but tricky, wind gusts through the hilltops, temperature drop mid-race, and the notorious crest at turn 10 waiting like a guillotine. Pecco's first few laps were neat, smooth, defensive, typical Bagnaia. He wasn't chasing podiums, he was trying to finish. That's the kind of mental prison champions rarely survive. Lap 13. Over the hill. Trail braking. The front suspension extended, traction flickered, and gravity took what it was owed. Pecco slid, the GP25 somersaulted, another weekend wasted. No drama, no theatrics. Just physics and disappointment. When he returned to the pits, Marc's crew was preparing data debrief, Acosta's garage was buzzing, and Ducati's side was silent like a funeral. Gigi Dall'Igna didn't look angry. He looked tired. Because this wasn't a one-off crash. This was a pattern of failure by design. Since Thailand, Pecco's average finishing rate was under 50%. In raw championship math, that's fatal. But in human math, that's even worse. You start doubting your touch, your instincts, the very rhythm that made you world champion. Marquez demoralized him, not intentionally, but inevitably. Sharing a box with the fastest man alive does that. Every time number 93 took the same machinery and made it dance, it carved another scar into number one's confidence. But let's not twist it. This wasn't a collapse of skill. This was a collapse of synergy. Bagnaia's style is built on feel, microbalance, front-load trust, precision braking. The GP25 demanded violence, corner entry commitment like Acosta, like Mark. Pecco doesn't ride with chaos. He rides with calculation. The bike betrayed his nature. When Laverty said he needs the best of the GP24 and the GP25 combined, that was more than a suggestion. That was Ducati's next survival blueprint. Because right now, their world champion can't even complete a clean race. How long before that silence becomes rebellion? And how long before Bologna realizes they broke their own man trying to build a new god? The collapse. Let's strip away the drama. The problem was mechanical. First, psychological second. Ducati's GP25 moved the aerodynamic load slightly forward and raised the center of gravity to enhance agility mid-corner. It worked for riders who live on the edge of chaos, but it shredded Bagnaia's grip discipline. Over 25 rounds, that mismatch became fatal. His braking points shortened, his lean angles widened, and his confidence in the front end dropped by microseconds. Just enough to ruin a lap, just enough to crash. It's the kind of decay that doesn't show up on data until the rider hits the gravel. Pirro, ever the loyal lieutenant, said he believed Pecco will be back stronger in 2026. Maybe he's right, because for all the wreckage, Bagnaia hasn't snapped publicly. No outbursts, no accusations, just silence. That silence is discipline, the kind that separates champions from complainers. Ducati, meanwhile, faces a ghost problem. The GP25's geometry worked brilliantly for Marquez's stop and pivot aggression, but it left Pecco stranded between two eras of bike philosophy. One built for precision, another for destruction. And in the middle, the man who made Bologna believe in balance. This isn't the first time the factory burned its favorite son. Remember Jorge Lorenzo in 2018? Same story. Overdeveloped front, underdeveloped communication. Lorenzo's language was smooth entry, stable braking. The bike stopped speaking his dialect. He left. If history repeats, Ducati may risk losing not just a title, but their identity. Because Pecco isn't just another rider. He's the benchmark of their evolution, the bridge between data and emotion. When that bridge collapses, teams drown in numbers. Laverty's statement echoes like prophecy. He needs a new bike. Translation: rebuild the trust, not just the frame. Merge the GP24's calm stability with the GP25's aggression. Take the power, delete the paranoia. Because the bigger danger isn't losing titles, it's losing belief. Pecco's crash count this season might read like a failure report, but every scar is a lesson. Every gravel mark is a memory written in truth. What's left when your machine stops believing in you? You learn to ride pain itself. That's where Bagnaia stands now, between survival and rebirth. So where do we place Pecco Bagnaia now? Not fallen, not finished, just weathered. This season isn't a decline, it's a scar carved by engineering arrogance. Ducati misread evolution. They tried to outpace physics and forgot psychology. And it backfired on the one man who gave them 2 titles and a face of composure in chaos. Bagnaia's 2025 stats are brutal. 5 DNFs in 6, only 2 podiums in 12, 0 back-to-back finishes since mid-season. Those numbers would bury anyone else, but not him. His calm isn't weakness, it's a furnace cooling itself to survive winter. The GP26 project, already whispered in corridors of Bologna, is said to merge the GP24's chassis behavior with the GP25's torque profile. If Laverty's forecast holds true, 2026 could see a reborn Desmos Adichie, one that forgives errors instead of amplifying them. The irony? Bagnaia predicted this. He told the engineers the GP24 had something sacred, feel. They traded it for aggression. And now they'll spend the next 6 months trying to recreate the ghost of that feeling. But let's get real. Champions don't vanish because of crashes. They vanish when they stop believing. Pecco still believes, maybe not in the machine, but in the process. And that's dangerous, because belief backed by scars becomes obsession. His eyes after Portimão said it all. Not rage, not tears, just calm defiance. The look of a man cataloging every failure so he can weaponize it next season. Pirro's words were more than comfort. They were prophecy. Tough times, but it won't last. He will be back. He's right. Tough times don't last. Stubborn riders do. Ducati's challenge now isn't mechanical, it's moral. They must prove loyalty to the man who stood when the factory was divided. Marquez may have brought the storm, but Bagnaia remains the anchor. If Bologna forgets that, they'll lose not just a rider, but the soul of their legacy. Portimão was the 5th fall, but maybe the first awakening. Because sometimes, you need to hit the gravel to remember the ground that made you. So let this season be the scar, not the shame. Let it remind every engineer in red that a champion's rhythm is more precious than a wind tunnel curve. 2026 isn't about revenge, it's about correction. And when Pecco walks back into the box next year, every eye will know, the man they doubted is the man they need. From now, where does this put him? Back to the roots. Between pain and rebirth. The time will tell us. Comment your take, drop your verdict, and subscribe, because scars tell better stories than trophies ever will.